Hi, thanks for joining this episode of They Learn You Win. I'm your host, David Wentworth from Skooks, and today I'm going to be talking about the human element of learning and development. I spent a lot of time thinking and writing and researching technology, but ultimately it's really about the people side of things. And so I can't think of a better guest to have with me than Lan Tran, who is the Director of Learning Design and Technology for McDonald's, an organization with a lot of people. So we're going to get into it with Lan and talk a little bit about how her organization approaches learning by keeping their learners and their people front of mind and some of the challenges and results that come from that. So I'm really excited about this conversation. So why don't we get right into it? All right. Well, Lon, thank you so much for joining me on this episode of They Learn You Win. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I've spent a lot of my career as an analyst looking at the world of learning technology. I work for Skooks, which is a learning technology provider. So just every day is constant technology. And what I love about today is we're going to try to talk about people a little more. Of course, how that intersects with technology, you can't take that out of the equation. But I'm really looking forward to sort of talking about people. And I think one of the exciting things about having you on the episode is your organization has a lot of people. And a lot of different kinds of people, which I think is fascinating to me. And when I talk to companies about some of their challenges around learning, some have these challenges over here, some have these challenges over here, and I would imagine your organizational population, you've probably got them from A to Z, with the different types of employees you have, the different structures of the organization. I mean, McDonald's just has so many different types, I'm imagining. So if you could, let's just start at the top around this idea around people first. And the reason why we wanted to do this episode is you and I were talking, and it just sort of came up that this was something that's top of mind for you all the time. And I would love to get a discussion going around how do you sort of get that kind of mindset? What does that mean to you, this sort of people first mindset when it comes to learning? How do you look at that?
It's so nice to be here, David. Thank you for inviting me to have this discussion with you. It's something I can talk about a lot. Yeah, there's a lot of people in at McDonald's. So I've been with McDonald's almost 2 years, and in my first year, I got to go to the McDonald's convention in Florida, and I don't think you realize how big McDonald's is until you go to something like that and you realize like there's more people here than most conferences or most concerts. It's just you see a sea of people. And what I also remember about that time was that being new to the company, and every company's like, hey, we're people first, we think about people first. But on this big forum where of course the CEO comes out first, but the second person who spoke was our chief people officer. And I would have to say in other companies, I probably would have seen like the chief marketing officer, operations, finance, something very business oriented. And I was like, wow, the chief people officer came on second. And to me, that highlights how important people are at McDonald's. And you're right, like if you include from corporate to our restaurant learners, we have over 2 million people that our courses can touch. And so we do have to think about all the people. And I'm a big believer that you can't create something for human beings unless you think about the human beings, know the human beings. What do they struggle with? What motivates them? What makes them do the things that they do? What keeps them engaged? Like, why do all of us like TikTok videos or YouTube videos or certain podcasts? So, and for me, people first, not just what I do, but when I lead is important because I strongly believe that if your people are happy, you will have a much more productive culture. And so to me, it's like being there to support my team and know that they're there and make sure that they're happy and that they have good well-being is very important to me as we continue to create things for people.
And that's, to me, that seems to be the right approach, right? And yeah, I think outsiders and people who might not be familiar at first blush might think, oh, McDonald's, because it's so large, they probably can't do things people first. Just it's a scale thing logistically. So you think, well, they probably do everything very methodically and very process oriented. But I think, more we talk about this to sort of bring this out, it's actually the opposite. You have to start with those people because there are so many different layers. I mean, like I said, the complexity to me, a lot of learning professionals will talk about this like organizations, and in their mind, they picture a building with a bunch of people at desks and cubicles, and well, there is that at play at McDonald's, correct? But then there's also frontline. You're in the stores, deskless workers, and I don't know how much your particular role crosses over. Maybe you can talk a little bit about it. But then you've got obviously a huge franchise environment, so you've got all these people who need to know all of these things, but they actually don't technically work for you. They work for somebody else, and that creates a whole other host of degrees of separation, which are challenging. In your role, do you come across any of that, like where you are dealing with learning for franchisees?
Yes. So I lead our global learning design team. And so we create all of our custom courses for both corporate and restaurant staff. So everything from leadership skills to how to make fries. You can get hungry talking about training at McDonald's. You spend like 10 minutes talking about the best burger. Next thing you know, like I need to go order a quarter pounder. So we have to think about our corporate users and what they need and how they need it. And then I would say 90% of our population is restaurant. And so 90% of our curriculum is restaurant, and really thinking about how do they access learning? What is their day-to-day like? Something when I joined the team with my lead that we established is we said, everyone on our team has to take annual restaurant training. So we all take it when we first join, but then to take it annual to help reconnect us back to the restaurants, remind us it's doing the steps to make fries can be easy, but it's all the stuff that adds on with it that makes the job hard. So you're monitoring how many fries should I put down? Because you can't put down too many, right? But you need enough to keep up with demand. And it's working within that team, and all of the multitasking that comes with it makes it hard. And that's something that we have to think about. And what I love about our global team is I have representation from Australia, UK, Spain, here in different parts here in the US. And I have a mix of folks who, like me, have been with McDonald's now for a few years, didn't start in the restaurants. Whereas I also have a set of folks who have started in the restaurants. They started at 16 and now they're doing corporate jobs, and they've been with McDonald's for anywhere between 20 to 40 years. And they love the brand, but it's a really great balance as we talk about new things in our experience and bringing in their experience and really learning from them, just what are the struggle areas for the restaurants. It's just so important to think about the people and what they do, because many times, if we think about learning platforms, LMSs, very fine for, or LXPs, very fine for corporate. But we're like, hey, y'all, our frontline workers aren't sitting in front of a computer every day. Some restaurants allow them to do mobile, some don't. Some have shared devices. One of the things I hear about languages all the time, people are like, oh, this is awesome. It defaults to your language in your browser. I'm like, well, that doesn't work. We're we have shared devices, and you have people who speak different languages. So if you're someone who doesn't speak a lot of English or read a lot of English, and you prefer, let's say, French, well, if the default in the browser is English, well, now this doesn't help you. So it is talking to vendors about, okay, you need to rethink about how you approach that so that we can make sure that everyone, when they come in, can know I can select the language that I want and get to the training I want. And then, vice versa, log out. And the next person, if they do speak English, can choose English and go in and get the English version of it.
Let's stay on this sort of global element, because clearly a global organization, and so language obviously comes with that. That's the first and foremost thing. But do you find that there are different approaches to the way you design your content or deliver your content based on geographies? Have you, is that a conscious thing where you think differently about the process outside of language, just the way in which the content is delivered? Or have you gotten to a point where the overall process is pretty standardized?
In terms of creating our courses, so one of the things when I came in was to help change how we approached learning, so that we can really get into where are those areas that we can make the most impact with the learning, and not just focusing on all the steps and all the content, because then people get blurred on okay, where do I need to focus to really learn? But it was also then thinking about what is standard across. So while there are some places where we have some customizations because of just the way culture is locally, also with legal requirements, but there are some certain standard things, right? When you go eat French fries in the US, you will get the same French fries if you go to France or you go to Germany, right? So there are things that are standard. So we're trying to find what is similar across that we can build in multiple languages, and so people can get that really fast. And then where do we need to do customized local add-ons, so then we are addressing the local cultural needs. And then in terms of, we're working through a checklist of saying, hey, when you're creating learning, what are things to keep in mind? Anything from technical requirements we need to now like accessibility. Are you keeping accessibility keep top of mind? And then the words that we use, like, is the language that we're using, would everybody globally understand it? Are the examples we're using, are we showing diverse cultures, diverse pictures? Are we taking into account just our global community while we're building? So there are some checklists and guidelines that I share with my team. Like, we want to make sure like we're not seen as just US centric, or it's just not seen like we only focus on certain markets, but that we're actually trying to represent everybody as much as possible. Of course, always there's a balance between limit and time and stuff like that. But I have to say, I'm very blessed to have a team that thinks about that, and that is very important to them as much as possible, to make sure that we represent everybody and that we're trying to do as much as possible what's right for everyone.
I've talked to a couple folks about both the accessibility and the inclusivity issues, sort of in the way they intertwine. And I think at first blush, a lot of people and companies think, well, yeah, we get it, we know that, of course. But the more you start to dig into things, I think the number of sort of phrases or idioms or things that we just would take for granted, these things that we think, well, that everybody gets that, everybody knows, you start to realize, oh, that is not the case. We do need to pay a little bit more attention to these things. And it's an ongoing process. It's always keeping an eye on it, always checking. And I think because, again, your organization's exemplary in this, because you do probably operate in almost more places around the world than anybody else, and so many different things to tackle there. So I think that, to me, is fascinating. And you also touched on something I think is really important for a lot of companies who are either already global or making that sort of break to move into other areas. When I was an analyst, I would get asked a lot, okay, should we be centralized or decentralized, right? It was like a on or off, black or white sort of question. And it's like, well, depends on what you're doing. And what you described to me has always been my response, is you have to find out what it is. What's the level of which you can draw that line and say, okay, everything from here up is just global, right? It's table stakes. We're going to do it like this all the way across. And then we have to figure out what the lines are for the different areas where we get to get it specialized for over here. And I think, you're taking that approach. And it sounds complicated on the surface, but you can't make it work otherwise, right? I think you cause more problems if you try to sort of centralize everything, trying to make it work. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, I have to say, in my previous organization, I think the CLO said it best, as we were talking about, decentralized, centralized model, and then the federated model, which is the hardest, right? Where you have a central global, but then you also have teams that are in each market. But she said, not everything can be centralized because of budget and time. There's just certain things we can't hit to every market. So what happens? The smaller markets might get, they don't get their needs met. But then once you go to decentralized, then what you have, though, is you have a lot of people doing the same thing. So in terms of efficiencies across the company, you've lost some of that. And so, yes, so while this federated model is harder, it does open a lot of ways to leverage what can happen from the large company, while still allowing the markets then to focus on what really are their areas of struggle that then they can focus on, while still leveraging the things from global. So I will say, it is still hard. It is
None
still
of this
hard.
is easy.
But
regardless,
it's not.
Regardless
it's not
of what
easy.
all us technology providers will tell you, we'll say, oh, we make it easy. Everything's hard, and it should be all right. If it's the right thing to do, it's hard. So, I appreciate that. One of the other things that fascinates me about your kind of environment is another thing a lot of, say, sort of enterprise type organizations take for granted is like in your organization. So if you look at, let's say you have a systems analyst, that person that got hired, when they got hired, they were a systems analyst, right? That's what they did, and they came into the organization. For the vast majority of your population, for a lot of them, they're learning the entire job from day one, right? It's not, they don't necessarily come in the door and have 80% of the job already. They're learning the entire job. And in some cases, their first job. So like even how to have a job are the things they're learning. So what are some of the things that you find, as we're trying to tie the technology and the content and the people, what are some of the things that you find work the best for that audience, that frontline restaurant? What are some of the things you've over the you've been there now 2 years? I know it's a lot of the stuff you do has a much longer tail than that, but what are some of the things you've gotten the best feedback on, or things that you have seen that maybe even were already in place that seem to be the most successful as far as the learners like buying in and being excited about it?
I say it's going back to the learner first and defining who is your audience. Because if you try to create something for everyone, you essentially usually create something for no one. So really defining like who is my target audience. And so right now we're actually redesigning some of our restaurant crew program. And I have to remind like it is for new crew. So yes, experienced crew can take it, but they're going to have a different experience than someone's new, because that is who our target audience is. And so when you think about the new crew, it's going in and say, okay, what makes this hard? What makes it hard for most new people to make this, have this task or do this job, and really learning where are those struggle points, and where does someone who like comes in and is doing an amazing job, what are they doing differently that's different from the normal folks, right? And then I also think it's determining like will they really have issues? I think a lot of times in learning we want to guess like, nobody will know anything, start from zero. I think you'd be surprised how much people can transfer
Yep.
skills and know. So I'm also big like, do you have to start with a lecture? Do you have to start with telling? Can you start with trying and let them go like, oh, I did this really well, but I didn't do this well. So maybe I need to go find help in this area. So I was telling my team, like, tell me, if you're telling me 80, 90% of the people will have no clue where to start, then fine. Let's talk about what kind of lecture-ish type of thing we can do to help them start and then really get into active practice, right? But if you're telling me some may have a good sense, well, then let's let them try and then still have all the supporting materials, but allowing them to try and really then focus in on where do they need learning. And then I would say reflection. I think many times we get focused on getting to the course and we don't think about reflection. That is the moment that people are tying into what am I doing and how does this tie and what questions I have. So if you think about a new person, they sometimes don't know what questions to ask because they don't know what they don't know. So now if you've given them an opportunity to go through some of the learning and, maybe try it in a safer environment, whether it's through a sim or a game or something like that, and then allow them to reflect and give them a moment to reflect and say, okay, I just saw this. I practiced it virtually. What questions do I have? What else do I need so that then maybe I can go ask an actual live human being there these questions. And so then even that live human being now can target that training to what I need versus saying like, I'm just going to dump all of this on you and you can take it all in and decipher what you need. So it is really important to start back to understanding your target audience and who it is and defining that and who is it really that you're creating this learning
Yeah,
for.
I mean, that is huge. This idea of acknowledging and recognizing prior knowledge. And again, it's one of those things where it might not be easy to do, but there's so much value in it, and the value is just what you're describing. You're able to. It helps the learner themselves because you're not providing them with redundant material. You're recognizing their inherent value of what they already know, so what they bring to the table. It helps the business because you're not wasting the learning time by putting them through redundant courses or wasting effort on their training. You're getting them where they need to be quickly. So I think that's huge, especially when you talk about the human side of things. That's probably one of their first experiences, and already the organization is saying, "Hey, we see you, we know where you are, and we want to help you with that." And like the whole point of this, and obviously the reason we wanted to talk to you about this today is this idea of thinking about the people first, how that incorporates into learning, how that feeds into the overall culture of the organization. And, in an environment like a McDonald's, in this frontline section anyway, you've got a relatively short window, right, to get people there where they feel like, yes, this is where I want to be, this is what I want to do. And so I think that's amazing to me that you do that, and that just shows the power of it and that it can be done at this scale. The other thing that you brought up, which I think is amazing, and I wanted to ask about, was you mentioned reflection a few times, which is amazing to me because are you saying you actually build in sort of like an element of reflection, time for reflection in these programs that the learners are getting?
Yeah. So as part of a redesign of our program, I mean, whether it's we recognize that everybody has different learning preferences, right? Some like just throw me into a game. Some's like, can I, watch something or read something first? So we're actually providing different modalities so that they can say, oh, what do I want to do? But at the end of each modality, there is a set of questions for them to stop and think about. Okay, what questions do I still have? What did I learn? How can I apply these things? So, because it's in those reflective moments that the behavior, the happens, the behavior change happens. So if you think about when most of us learn is either we're really happy and we reflect and like, oh, I know I should keep doing that because that makes me happy. But when most of us learn is when we feel bad, when we made a mistake, and you just feel awful, and you reflect and you're like, okay, how can I never feel this way again? And so you have this moment, you start thinking about what is it I need to do differently so as I can never have this moment again. And that's what we're trying to drive towards, is an authentic aha moment. I think a lot of times in learning, people are trying to force aha moments, like, oh, I'm going to do this trick. I'm just going to make this not work. And so then they're forced into this bad place. Well, you can't force someone. If you want them to have the behavior change, it has to be theirs. Because as human beings, we will remember more what we think and say than what you tell me.
I mean,
and so if you can get them to that aha moment yourself through the emotions that you build through, whether it's a video or a course or an active practice or anything like that, you will get them to think about how can I do things differently? How can I do things to get to the results I want so that I can feel happy?
I mean, I just, as you're talking about, I think of myself and the number of times I've heard from the same advice from different people, and okay, that sounds good. That sounds fine. And then all of a sudden it's your own internal voice that goes, you know what? In order for this to change, you might want to think about this differently. And you go, oh, yeah. And you're right. These things have to come from inside. And so our job as learning professionals is to provide that opportunity for that to happen, not force that to happen. And I'm so glad you were, expanded on that and talked about it, because I think one of the pushbacks you get whenever you talk about things like reflection or practice or things like that when it comes to learning is, well, there's no time, right? Nobody has any time for anything. And because the people building the learning, delivering the learning, they feel like they have no time. And they know that the learners have no time. I mean, we're trying to fit this learning into their busy schedules already. So you say something like reflection, and it sounds so soft and so kind of elevated. You're like, well, that'd be nice, but we can't do that. But the reality is, like you said, well, if you really want the things to occur that you're trying to drive with the learning, that has to be there. Otherwise, you're just, bulldozing through, crossing your fingers and hoping the majority of people, make the change. And that doesn't always work out.
And it can happen at the end. And maybe it's like, hey, show this up. So you walk away, like, think about this, or even post emails after a program or something. I was like, there's questions you can ask to help people think about it. So while I do love making time for it, of course, I totally hear, like, sometimes, like, we live in a TikTok world. People want things our way. So, okay, I might not be able to fit all of that in my minute or less focus, but I can flash it up at the end and give people an opportunity to be, like, see it and think about it and continue. So if they see it, then they'll at least see it now, and they can force themselves to think about it. And if we do it in every module, people start picking up, like, oh, at the end of every of these things, I should take a moment and reflect.
Has the TikTok world influenced the way you guys deliver stuff, put things together? I mean, that's sort of becoming your target audience at this point too, right? So,
yeah, I would say it is in terms of, like, brevity. I mean, I've told some people, like, oh, like a TikTok style video, but I don't mean, like, exactly what they're doing TikTok. I think there's times and moments for those formats, but I really do think in the brevity. I think many times, especially in, like, an HR sort, we tend to think, oh, everyone needs all the things. And if I want to make sure that I did my job and told you all the things, I will tell you all the things. And the truth is, like, people get lost, and then they don't remember. They don't remember what to remember.
You can't tell, you can't tell them all the things all at once.
Go ahead.
Right? That'll never work.
No. Exactly. So you have to think about how do you space it out. But also just, I think then it really forces the speaker to go, okay, if I only have a minute, what is it that's the most important thing that you need to know right now to make this happen? And then I would also say, was it a few months ago, someone actually told me, like, TED Talks are too long. I remember when TED Talks came out and everyone's like, I love TED Talks. They're so much shorter than the hour stuff that I usually have to listen to. And now TED Talks are too long. So, but I also say it's about engagement. I know people want to go to bite size, and I do believe in shorter, right? I see an article, and if the estimated time is 13 minutes, I'm like, maybe we'll read that later and not right now. But how many of us still sit through a movie or a television episode or anything like that? There's something about engagement. So some things do need to take the time it takes. The question, and I would say the challenge up to our learning designers, like, how do you create so engaging that they don't feel like, oh, that was a wasted
Right.
hour or 20 minutes, but it's actually a valuable use of time and not sitting there counting down
And
the
that's the
time.
true measurement, right? It isn't this thing took 25 minutes. Doesn't matter how long it took.
Hmm.
This was valuable, right? It was 6 seconds. It was
Yes.
45 minutes. The measure is this was valuable. And I think, that's a real skill set that's going to come is, you say how people are saying TikToks are too long. I mean, it's not that long ago where Vines were a thing, which I think ended up being absorbed by TikTok, but they were literally only 6 seconds. That's all you had. And people were able to tell like a full beginning, middle, end story in 6 seconds. And so I think there is a skill to be in a short period of time to be able to get a message across that is engaging. But it's also not the thing of, well, everything's got to be short TikToks now. It has to match
Hmm.
what you're trying to say, who you're trying to say it to, and everybody gets it. Not everything is going to be like that. There is a need for a larger sort of foundational piece that's bigger and it requires a little more time. But like you said, watch a movie movies are getting longer. They're like 3 hours now.
Yeah.
So the thing is, okay, I have this 20-minute training video I want to play. Fine and good. Remember, yes, people will watch a 20-minute episode of a show, but how entertaining is that show and how engaging is your material? You have to weigh those things out. So yeah, I think it's interesting to see the TikTokization of things, and how that's going. But it isn't about a fad like a technology like TikTok. It's literally about
Hmm.
connecting with people in a time and in a format that makes sense. So as time goes by and TikTok either comes or goes and there's some other thing, the concepts don't change, right? We're just trying to get people where they
Yeah.
are and when they need it. So yeah.
Yeah. I tell my team there's learning entertainment, right? So I tell them, like, hey, think about your everyday life, get inspiration, ask yourself, like, oh, why is that reel so, attractive to everyone? Why is someone on it, right? I think I recently saw, like, there's someone who's like, she eats like everything in mustard and cottage cheese. And while it's not my thing to watch her reel, I've seen her. I have to sit back and like, what makes her reel so interesting that everybody's watching it? And so, and really think like, okay, once we think about what's that motivation, how can we apply it to what we're doing and learning? I mean, so many folks have grown up with YouTube and they're just watching other people play video games and commenting. And I remember I asked my niece, like, why is that entertaining? And she would tell me things like, well, it's all about the comments and sharing and all this stuff. And so I'm sitting here thinking like, okay, how do I take that and apply it into the learning what we're doing? Because I think we tend to forget sometimes that in learning what we're creating are just the same thing that people are doing outside the everywhere world. E-learning is an app. So the same things that you apply to a software development user UX experience should also be applied to what you're creating. The thing that's added now is that it's for that app to be successful, someone's behavior should change. The goals you're trying to set needs to be changed. And that's what I love about learning. It's like an elevated experience of the apps and the things that you're creating, because if someone doesn't walk away with the behavior change, then it's failed. You can create the coolest looking thing. But at the end of the day, we are still creating an app. We are still creating things that people see on the real world. So we just need to apply that
Yeah.
to what we're
I
doing.
mean, that your example that the YouTube, I have kids that when they were younger, they would watch other kids play, do Minecraft on YouTube. And that's when I sort of felt like I had crossed the threshold of, young technology guy to old guy who doesn't get it, because I couldn't understand. I'm like, why would you have the game, you could play the game right now. But you think about it, you step back for a second and it makes so much sense from a learning perspective is they're watching somebody do something that they enjoy doing, but they're watching somebody do it really well, and they're learning how to do it really well, and they're listening or reading other people talk about how to do this thing really well. And it's like, boy, that's how to learn something. You watch somebody who's really good at it, who has a handle on how to talk about the things that they're doing, and so now you're learning how to be better at that skill. So it actually, makes sense from that perspective. Yeah, that's there's so many opportunities from that. I look at like all kinds of video game things. Like you think of something like a Call of Duty where people are, multiplayer online from around the world coming in as a team to try to play this game. And it's like, well, it's a learning experience. They're coming together as a cohort. They're working together to achieve a goal. They get partway through it and they fail, and they have to start backwards a little bit. and take what they learned from failing and go again until they get to the end. It's like that's learning. That's team-based learning. We should be doing more things like that. I love that. So one of the things is, we touched on it, all the things that you're doing. What's from your perspective in dealing and talking to other parts of the business? You mentioned like your chief people officer coming out second at that conference, which I love that our chief people officer is so present at everything we do. We were just at HR Tech recently, and he was there, and talking to folks, meeting people, because it's a big part of what we do. So I love that. What kind of conversations, what kind of strategy goes on where you start thinking about the overall organizational culture, which clearly there is a McDonald's culture, and then how that translates into L&D? Just any sort of, are there specific strategy meetings around, how do we fill the learning environment with our overall culture, or what does that look like?
So I say we have lots of conversations. So there's cross-functional, right? Our operations team want to make sure everyone's doing by policy and step by step. And then we have to go to markets, like, okay, in the markets, what are your specific restaurants suffering with? What are they struggling with? And how can we help there? And then balancing it out. With over 2 million people, the truth is, I'm not going to make everybody happy. And that is something I told my team, we have to set the standards of what we're willing to say is success. And I'm not going to make over 2 million, every single 2 million person happy. That said, can I make the majority? And so we think about the problems. I think you'd be surprised where we have common things across the board. And I think also reminding people intent and going back to what problems are we solving for? Where are they really struggling? So when someone gets caught up in this doesn't look exactly like the way they had it, I'm like, but is that the intent? Do they need to, or are they able to make the leap? If it sort of looks like what's in my area, I can apply it. And not to bring up YouTube again, but how many of us watch YouTube videos that isn't exactly the thing we have, but it's close enough that we can leverage what we're getting for that and apply it. And so I'd say in the last year, I've done a lot more collaboration. My team has been amazing of all the stakeholders that they've been working with. And just recently, we started for our restaurant curriculum and advisory council with different representations across the markets and ops and learning and people, and really coming together and say, okay, how can, we make sure that learning and operation, everything, we're going together and we're supporting each other as we move forward to make, as much as possible, make the lives of our restaurants and our corporate folks easy and better. And we're not going to get it perfect the first time or possibly in the second time. So one of the things we've talked a lot about our team is test and learn. What we're going to try, because the thing is, if we don't even try, we'll never know what's going to work and not work. And so let's put that out and try. And awesome, it works the first time. It's great. But I think we continually as a team have to reflect and think about, is that process that we continue to elevate and do better? And as things change in the world, is that process still needed? Or do we need to change it? And just constantly coming back to what is our purpose and the problems that we're solving for.
Boy, I feel like day one for your organization should be, you can't make everybody happy. You have to just accept that. I think that's a struggle for an organization, obviously much smaller than yours. They think, I can do this. But you've got to just be look, we're going to do the best we can, and it's, and we're going to make it work. I think that's, a realization folks have to come up with. And so one of the other things about, you mentioned some things, it doesn't work, right? Sometimes it doesn't work. And I think you've got to be okay. We talk about it from a learning perspective, giving learners a chance to fail, right? Because that is a learning experience by definition. I think we have to let ourselves fail, or else we'll never try things. Do you feel like your organization has that culture in it? And it's hard. Even organizations that say, listen, we're fail fast and learn it, when it comes down to it, it's still, I don't want to make a mistake. Do you feel like you are given sort of rein, look, I really believe in this, I think it's going to work, but if it doesn't, that's also a result, right? We've learned something.
Yeah, I say it's definitely hard, and you have to influence people. I say for the most part, yes, especially within learning team. One of the things I've enjoyed about McDonald's over my almost 2 years here is they have trusted in me to go try new things and work with new vendors. And I have been very blessed with a team who embraced my vision and strategy and say, okay, we're going to move forward and make this happen. And there has been hard moments. And actually, one of my team members did say a few months ago, he's like, I know you believe in the test and learn. I know it's good with you, but is the large organization, is leadership? I'm not so sure. But I'm also like, we don't know till we try, and we just have to keep trying. And I said, like, as long as you try and you do your best, and I know you're doing your best, I will always stand and support you on that. So it does take, from a leadership perspective, continuing to support. And this person knows, like, I will always stand up and fight, and where, we need to, and where I need to have conversations with leadership, I will. But yeah, it is a struggle. But I will say, for the most part, people have been on board with it to try it. Now, again, you're going to hear criticism. You're not going to make everyone happy, but also everyone's been great about. But let's look at the bigger picture of where we've moved, and I think the thing to also realize is, like, as you solve one set of problems, or as you make things great and you elevate, you actually just open up some new things. Like, now this is new things we now need to solve for and try. I would say it's like kids, right? I've heard people say, "Oh, well, when they're this age or this thing, it's going to be better." I'm like, that might be better. Something new will come along. And so that's the thing to remind my teams, like, as we introduce new process, we solved one problem, but we may open up other things. But honestly, yeah, until we try, we don't know. And so I have to say they have been better about that. And especially if we can influence along. Now, if something everyone already is like, no, I'm 100% sure this is not going to happen, we try something similar. Okay, fine. We tweak it a little bit. But I would say, if we're saying, like, we're really at a place we don't know. Like, this is me making this assumption or you making this assumption. I say, yeah, let's go try. Or what I've done is, like, let's go pilot with our users, our actual learners. If we're not sure, let's go ask them. Let's go pilot, prototype a small part. I don't need to do the entire 6-month program. Maybe I just need to do this one ILT version or this one e-learning and see what is their reaction. And that will tell me, am I over-assuming, under-assuming? So I think it is important to get learner feedback along the way. And sometimes when you can't do time stuff, like, what, let's put it out there and see what happens. I mean, software teams do it all the time, right?
That's their DNA.
I mean, Apple wouldn't constantly put out releases and fixes if everything was perfect.
Right. It is funny how, instructional designers still very much live by the ADDIE model, which I understand why the principles are strong, but it's based off of the waterfall method of software design, which I dare you to find a software designer that adheres to the waterfall method anymore, because it's just, you can't start this process and then finish it 6 months later and go, hope that was right. You need these change, be open to change as it goes by. And what you were describing too, it reminds me of any sort of home improvement project I've ever started. I think I'm just going to fix this one thing over here, and as soon as you start that, you realize, oh no, and the thing behind that, it needs to be fixed too. And then there's other thing over here, and it does it. You have to be prepared for the unexpected and the change that's going to come. One of the last things I want to talk about as we're wrapping up, bringing it all back home to the people, I think your organization has also got a unique perspective. One of the things that I'm always interested in is, because we spend so much time as learning professionals talking to other learning professionals and going to events and webinars, and you get a lot of these conversations, and you can get it into your head that every single person that works somewhere is hungry to learn and grow and develop and be on this. And so we're trying to build that, and it feels good. And it's like ultimately what we want to do. The reality of most organizations is that's not everybody. And does McDonald's have like an intentional perspective on their employees, or even, I know that a lot of them are franchisees, so not employees, but they're learners that, listen, yes, there are people that want to be, you've got so many people have these stories of, I started in a store, it was my first job, and now I'm VP of X, right? You've got those stories. Mm-hmm. But for a lot of people, it is, and I don't mean to say just, but it's a job. And for some, it's very short term. For other people, it's relatively long term. It's still a job, but do you intentionally look at these things like, how do we support those people who don't necessarily need or want all of this big growth and development, where they just want to be supported and they're happy doing what they do? Is that something that you guys think about?
Absolutely. And we're starting to get more into continuous learning. And one of the things is, we do have crew members who have been crew for a long time, and they're very happy where they're at. They have, they're like, I don't want to get in management. This is where I'm good where I'm at. And that's great. And it's always like, okay, so what can we give them to continue to grow in their job? And that's something we are starting to think about. And I would say, I've never been in an organization with anyone who doesn't say learning is important. I think where it gets hard is how do you make time for learning, right? Everyone struggles with the how do you make time. And the thing is, sometimes you have to take ownership of your own learning and force your time. Like, I have lots of meetings, but I read lots of articles on the weekends or my downtime, I find what works within my schedule. And what I say for my last organization, when we're doing analytics and we're going through and seeing 1 year, realizing, hey, we had more people visiting our corporate university, but somehow our total learning hours went down from the year before. And when we dug in deep, we realized, hold on, people are picking shorter learning experiences versus the longer one. And so what that tells me is like people are trying to find things that fit in the flow of life. I know we talk a lot about like flow of work, but the thing is, especially I would say on the corporate side, it's like what fits in the flow of my life and my everyday we're doing that I can learn. But yeah, there's plenty of people who are like, I'm happy in the job. I don't necessarily want to promote or anything like that. But so how can we continue to build things for them to continue to learn? And so those are things that we're continuing to think about. Like how can we continue to give them active practice? And the truth is, even if you stay in the same job, the world is changing around us. And I mean, I always tell people, right, like I just got the new iPhone. By this time next year, I will have the old iPhone. So with the world changing around us, they do constantly need to learn to keep up with what's happening in the changing environment, even if they stay within the same
Right.
role.
Yeah. So what is your role? How does that look now? And how do you prepare for that role in the future? And it's so important because I think there's a
Yeah.
real missed opportunity in a lot of our organizations where they talk about, well, we need to keep our top talent. We need to retain our top talent. And that translates to we have to grow them, develop them, leadership track, all this. And I say, ooh, you might be wasting a huge opportunity to really hold on to your core top talent. These are people who love what they do, are really good at it, and that's what they want to do. How do we support those
No.
people and keep them, feeling like they're still
Yeah.
growing and developing? Because I think if we put too much pressure on this, the development part or the growth part, it almost feels like punishment or slight to say, well, you're
Mhm.
just this, and you could be more. And so I think
Yeah.
we need to be careful with that.
Yeah. I can't remember whose book it's now, but there is a book, and I can't remember now. It's Radical Candor, one of the Adam Grant books. I'm getting the mess up. There, they talk about, you want the set of people who are wanting to elevate and grow in their careers, and then you want the set of folks who are like happy with where they're at and it can be the foundation, like you said, who grows, and there's the consistency across. So you definitely need both in your team, because if everyone is like hungry to grow, the truth is then you're constantly bringing in new team members. Your team is constantly changing. And so then you don't have consistency. But at the same time, if nobody's interested in elevating, then how do you do succession planning and get people to move around? Because there's moments, I remember I had a team member in my last place where, great, oh my God, he made my life easy. I promoted him twice, a few times within a row. But I got to a point with him where I'm like, I love you on this team. You make my life easy. But I think for you to continue growing, you actually need to go step into another role, another team. But I said, that's up to you. If you're fine with where you're at, then stay. I'm fine with where you're at. But if you, based on where you want to go career wise, I was like, as much as I want to keep you in team and I'll always be here to support you, I actually think you need to go find another opportunity. It would be absolutely selfish of me and not being his
Right.
lead to have continually kept
Yep.
him in role.
Yeah, and that's the balance is making it known that the opportunities are there, but also making it known that it's not a detriment if you do not follow that path, right? It's not a negative. So
Yeah.
I think that's great. I appreciate those insights. All right, so we have reached the point in the episode where it's prediction time. And so what I would ask of you is I'm going to give you three choices, and I want you to tell me which one you want. Because what we're going to do is we can either, one, we can look at a prediction that was made last year, the year before, that should have come true by now. We can look at, this is number two, a prediction that has been made, say, this year that should come to fruition within the next year or two. So one that's sort of open, and we could talk about that. Or three, you can make your very own prediction for the near or far future. All of these obviously within the lens of learning and development. Would you choose one, two, or three?
Let's
All
go
right.
with two.
Okay, so let's look. We're going to look at. I have a good one for you. We're going to do, and this is this is probably one that's going to. I could do this for the next 5 years. But right now, obviously, a lot of predictions out. AI is on everyone's mind. Everyone's talking about artificial intelligence. The spectrum. My favorite thing is I have two articles bookmarked. One is, AI is going to change human civilization, and the other one is AI is a waste of time. So somewhere in the middle, there is truth. The prediction is that that AI is in short order, right? So this is a relatively near-term prediction. AI is going to sort of take over with course creation and things like that. What's your take on that?
So I definitely know a lot of people and a lot of vendors who are definitely playing around with that. Like, how can you get AI to create a course? I've seen them create it with role plays. I've seen them try to create simulations and all of those things. So I do think AI will get to the point where it can create some courses, but I don't think it's going to be able to create all the courses. And so if you think about like taxes, we have had tools to do taxes for that people do taxes on their own for many years now, but there are still people who do taxes as a living. There's still companies who offer those services and are still making
Mm-hmm.
money off of that. And so while I think AI will get to the point where it can do maybe some simple courses, some, I would say, what I like to call awareness courses that are more comms projects and not true learning behavior courses, I do think it can get to a point there. Is it quite there yet? No, there's probably some areas it doesn't do well, but there are places where I think it can get to that. But I think to the ones where, it's really going to move the needle on emotions and really think about understanding the human being and that target audience and really moving the needle on behavior change and elevating the employee experience. No, I don't think AI is going to create that. I think you're going to still need a human being because like an article I just posted on my LinkedIn, it's like, you're going to need people to understand people. You need someone to understand human beings. And here's the thing, AI still works off of rules and algorithms. It's still a code, right? And so while they've got to down where it feels personalized, it's still a code. And the thing is, human beings don't always follow the code. While maybe there's certain things you can watch human behavior, so most of the time we do, but there's moments we are illogical. And that is where when you create those things and like we're saying, those authentic aha moments, those emotions, I'm not controlling that. I'm setting up the experience for that end user to create that. And I don't think AI can create that experience. So I still think there will be people who are creating courses. I think they'll just have to change what they're creating and how they go about it. I have a framework that I talked about in conferences last year, and I'm working on a bug and stuff. And one of the first things I said is for you to change what you create, you have to change your mindset. So if I want to change what I create and how I can impact my end users, I have to change my mindset of what I create. And to me, and what my team does, we don't just create training. Right. We create experiences that can change someone's lives. It can change how they work. It can change the impact of their team. It can impact the business and their employee experience and their performance. And so to me, that's what we create. And that I don't think an AI can create.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that none of this is coming in the next couple of years. It's fascinating what AI can do. I think it's just being realistic about what that is. And I think it's going to be helpful with a lot of, for lack of a better term, grunt work, right? Just a lot of sort of the kind of stuff that a person could do if they had the time and wherewithal to look through everything, right? So the assimilation of information. And I think, from a course creation standpoint, it could probably give you some, it could be shorthand, right? Get you started, help you, give you a place to go from. But to me, the ultimate cutoff from an artificial intelligence standpoint, to me, for it to truly be like an AI, there's the execution side of things, right? Like it's just going to do it. I don't think, and maybe this is their error is on the human side where people just aren't ready to let the machine do the thing yet. Like, okay, I'll put all the information into the AI. You tell me what you think it's going to be and give me some suggestions, but I'll decide whether or not I do that thing. So it's like, there's self-driving cars, they exist. Not a ton of people are really excited about being on the road with self-driving cars. That's sort of the ultimate execution of AI, right? It's doing the things. I think people still feel that I'd rather have people as frail and flawed as we are doing that job. So I agree with you. I don't think we're going to just you're not going to push a button and literally like I need a course on X, hit go and walk away, and think that it's going to roll out. I don't know when and if that would happen. So I appreciate your realistic perspective on it because I spent a lot of time listening to a lot of hype around what it's going to do for us and for me. And I think we just really need to be, realistic. I don't think it's a joke or a fad. It's a real thing, clearly. But we just need to be honest and realistic. Yeah.
I agree. I think it has value. And I think even McDonald's, we're exploring and seeing like where can it help. But yeah, I'm still going to need my team of course.
I mean, I would imagine the size and the tenure of McDonald's as a corporation, they've tried all kinds of things over the years, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's from the product side, the retail side, AI in systems there being worked on, not just in your, I'm sure where there are opportunities, your organization is looking at them and thinking about them. So it's be interesting to see how that all plays out. Awesome. Well, listen, I really appreciate you spending time with us. I know you've got a busy job. How have the 2 years been? Been pretty exciting there? I imagine.
It has been good. And thank you. This has been a great fun conversation. No, it's been good. What I've really loved is just how much I do think about the people in the restaurants. That's something when I first started and talking to my team and learning like what keeps you here, what keeps you excited. Almost everyone I was like thinking about the people, and especially those in the restaurants, and really thinking about what they do. And the truth is, like, us sitting in corporate, we wouldn't have jobs without them. And so the team is very much aware, like, that comes with respect that needs to come from us in corporate. And so it's been really great. And I've been very blessed that we've had just an amazing team who just took on my vision and the strategy and was like, okay, we can do it, and they move it forward. And they have been doing amazing changes and work that there's no way like where I'd want to go could be done without them. It's definitely been a group effort, and many things I've learned from them and they've learned from me, and we've done it together, and it's been amazing. It's been a good ride, and continue to see more stuff that we can do here at
McDonald's.
McDonald's.
I mean, it's an organization that has got a vaunted history with learning. It's always been at the forefront and been cited year after year after year for all the different advances that the company makes. So I think they're lucky to have you, and you seem to be a good fit, especially with the topic that we're talking about how people first. And boy, you've got a lot of people. So I'm really impressed with a lot of things that you guys are doing. So thank you so much for your time on this episode. And folks, if you want to hear other episodes on this podcast, please subscribe to They Learn You Win. And, Lan, thank you so much for showing us an example of how when your people learn, your organization wins. So thanks again.
Thank you.